All right, there we go. Let's drag this over here. Bring this up here. Hey, hey, hey. How are we doing? Can you hear me? I'm actually okay. Good. I downloaded, well, I upgraded, and in context, I downloaded Keyshot, and I think I have all my stuff transferred. So we're going to open Keyshot real quick to make sure. It wasn't working all morning. I was trying to do this, and I text Paul, and he was like, oh, you have to upgrade. I guess there's a Zbrush 2021.4, and that had something to do with the licenses package or something. So let us check and see. Now see, that's really weird. I should have a lot more materials there. See how that's not opening up as a folder? I don't see. Oh, there it is. This poor machine may not be completely happy about rendering. Okay, so our world is a little too small, obviously. Environment. Size. Yeah, rendering might be a little laggy, guys, but we'll see. Hold on. Oh, hold on, let me see if I can get this not to take up the whole world. Ooh. Is the stream lagging at all? The stream's lagging because of rendering, I think. Yeah, rendering might be a little rough on this machine. Hey, hey, hey. Nope, it's me. I'm here. We're all good. Well, we have a few things with the upgrade that's a little odd to me. So when we get to the demo for Keyshot, it might be a little laggy. No, I mean, it might be lagging on my machine. Okay, so basically, let's just Is it time? Yeah, it's 10:08. So because my the poor computer here is a little small to really be doing monstrous rendering, and for some reason my materials are being a little weird, let's just do a quick key shot demo. And for those who aren't here, who are coming in late, I just want this to be at the beginning because this is streaming and weird and it's not being very helpful at the moment. So I just uploaded or just downloaded the brand new version, so my menus are a little different. Okay, so just real quick, within render, we go to external renderers and we hit key shot. Okay. What are y'all talking about? I downloaded the program. This is your video. What's our lag? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Fuck, we already have a 30-second lag, at least. Okay, so we already have a hellish lag. So I just want to get this as a demo, right? This way it's live and you can ask questions instead of me just doing a video. But I didn't realize this machine was didn't particularly care for rendering. It's a little slow compared to my machine at home. Okay, so you have your model, right? Within render, external renderer, make sure you select key shot. Well, that is, of course, if you're using key shot to render, but that's what we're using. And then all you have to do is push BPR, best possible render, becomes the shift to the external renderer. So we hit that, and then it will transfer the model over to key shot. So now this is our model. As you'll notice, it retains the materials from Zbrush. So if you do poly painting or anything like that within Zbrush, it retains it. Okay. So we're here. Now environments are over here. Let's see if we have the one I want. When I'm using silver, or when I'm using the jewelry stuff, I like this Versus clothing store as my environment. It has good lighting for metallics, and it has some interesting color. There's a blue and a red in it that give you kind of a good reflection. So as you notice, it is the background, right? Well, we don't want that. We're going to go to scene right here. Environment right here. We are going to open these, right? See how this is white. So this is where you choose what color you're reflecting, or what color the environment is, because it's going to still use this as a reflection map, but the background image is going to be color, right? So now we're in a white environment. Remember I told you the place got hit by a car. So now, right, we have selected a color for our background. Like if you have like if you're doing product shot and you have a consistent backplate image, you can use that as well. And so now we have within them, so first. Camera, we're going to slide this out to about 150, 145. In that range is what the human eye is. So I just slide it into the general direction. It's never that particular. Environment, you just have to make sure that the size is big enough. So I just type in 1,000. Height is just sort of the height angle. Just I slide it over all the way over to the right. So right now we're dealing with brightness and contrast, but I'm not going to do that until we get our material on, okay? I'm just going through what I have over here. So camera's good, environment's good. Lighting, I'm going to put down, there's custom, oh, they've changed it. So jewelry, we'll select jewelry. And you notice how our contrast got a little bigger, but you see how we have these sharp shadows in there. And you can kind of play in here to get sort of what you want, right? You can, a lot of this really is coming in and sliding things around. At least that's how I do it. Like I said, this is a pretty quick process just to get some general renderings out. All right, so then we jump over to this side. We go to materials. Like I said, for some reason, not all of my materials are showing up, but let's just grab one of these. And all you do is bring it over here, drag it onto the model. And so now we see, let's go to this, just so it's not quite so reflective. For some reason, my materials aren't showing. Now the other thing, I'm going to come back over here, environment. There we go. So I'm going to come over here and see ground illumination and self shadow. I don't want all the sparkly stuff, right? Let's say this is a product shot. So we're going to turn that off and that off. And as you'll see, a lot of this stuff will disappear. You notice a straight line? That's the size of our floor. So if we come back over to environment, see ground shadows? I'm going to turn those off for right now because I want this sort of just product shot in its own environment. That also cuts down on some of the processing power it needs. So this is kind of a odd material, but let's, okay, that's fine. So you see it's pretty dark right now. So we're going to come back and play with that. Don't worry about it. And also we have 100% reflection. So we're going to deal with all of that right now. So we chose our material. It's obviously not working. It's really dark, right? So we come over to environment. And the first thing I'm going to do is come into HDRI editor, right? And I'm going to bring the saturation down a lot. So it's turning it mostly into a black and white. But you see there's a bit of purple and a bit of red there. So there's a little bit of color in the render. We're going to blur it a little so it's not shelves and racks and stuff like that. It's just, it's reflection material, right? And so now what I'm going to do is come in here with brightness and get our brightness up. There we go. You can see how that's now a little more realistic. And you can play with your contrast. I'm going to take the contrast down a little, which grays out some of our blacks, right? But you can see how we're slowly stepping forward and getting the detail we want. Now, this is gradually, see how this is pixelated? That's because it's thinking, it's processing this as we go along. And it should, as you notice, over time, it'll start, see like these little white specks and stuff, it'll slowly start to get to where you want it to get to. Now, I'm going to change the angle, right? We kind of want it to be pretty straightforward for this image. We're going to go pan and kind of move it down. All right, there we go. And now it'll start processing through that. Yeah, you're going to have to just be patient because rendering is taking up all of my CPU. That's why I want to get this done And then that way it shouldn't lag like that in the recording, right? I'm hoping. Yeah, no. Aren't y'all used to this by now? If the video is lagging and being weird, it is because my CPU is being taken up and it's starting to cut out some of the transfer stuff. So hopefully we'll be able to sort this out. If not, I will have Ryan give us a little bit of time, and I will do the same thing on the recording within GoToMeeting, and then that'll be posted. So once again, you guys should know by now if you're getting lag, why you're getting lag. And I've said it a couple times already, and that is rendering is very hard on this machine, obviously. I had no idea until we started it. So okay. So as you can see, we got to where, I mean, this is pretty close to what I would want for this image. We might bring the contrast down a little more. Right, just so we get a little bit more surface detail and the such. This is all part of the material. I'll give you my materials, but I don't know what, like I said, for some reason, this isn't showing up as a folder like my other one did, so I'll sort it out, and if you have any questions. But this is just kind of literally this, that's all I did, right? And this is how I do the product, right? I mean, I have a handful of materials and we drag them on. And so to change materials, let's say we're going to gemstones, right? Let's go here, and I'm just going to grab this and drag it on, let it go, and now as you can see, this is black. So we have to come under material, select the gemstone, and it has to do with refractive index and transparency distance. And I can't remember which direction it is. You literally have to slide this. Let's see if it's 3. There you go. And so you can see by it's the when it just goes black, it has to do with the transparency distance usually. And so, you know, let's, right, that transparency distance is 1. And now we'll do 0.5. Right, so you're seeing how the transparency distance 4, and see how it becomes more transparent. So transparency distance is literally its translucency, right? So if you're doing anything that has to do with gems or glass, if it just comes in black, remember that it's the transparency distance. Refractive index has to do with gemstones. You can actually look up gemstones refractive index, and it will give you what the gemstones refractive index should be, and you can type it in and go there. Roughness literally is that. It just makes the surface rough. So you get, instead of glass reflectivity, you get more like a sand-blasted surface. So that gives you just a real quick idea of how to deal with the colors, right? And you literally just drag it on, and you can see we're black, right? If we go to material, select on material, see transparency distance is 0.005. So it's not transparent, right? Just come in, type in 1, go up, and now you can see that you have transparency. No, with faceted stones, it's the exact same thing. It is dealing with its refractive index. And so literally this is just how you change materials. Plastic, packaging. I mean, you know, you want to see it here. right? You want to see it here, right? And so it is literally that simple. You just drop different things on. You're going to have to run through and change your materials a little, like for the jewelry stuff. Right. And so I have, like I said, I have more material. I don't know why they're not showing up. I just have to load them properly, obviously. So you come in and you find what material you want, right? And I think this was the material we had, and I don't know why it's black now. So let's go to material. And so this is the other thing that KeyShot is very cool. It's sort of procedural materials. So you come in here and you go to material graph. And do you see how, right? This is occlusion, a color adjust for occlusion, paint, there's a texture on it, texture map, curvature, so that gives you like the sort of outliney stuff onto this metal. And these literally are just drag and drop, right? You can kind of change it within these. You can change the percentages. And so this is how you can kind of work on your materials, right? And a lot of this is just experimenting. There are lots of good videos on this. But obviously I've done in our process, I trash this material somehow, right? So let's just go to something that gives us what we're looking for. There we go. And so you can see I set up a bunch of these, and often I just drop them just real quick. You can see that we still have the reflections and stuff. We've saturated the color out of them. It can. You have to go through and work on it, but yes, it can. No, once you get your materials select, I mean, literally, this is what I do. I open this up, I drag a material on, I will come to environment, and there is like a little rotator. See, transform. So rotation, you can rotate. So if you look here, this is your reflective environment, right? And so you can rotate it, and it'll change where the highlights and lowlights are. Right, you can see that it's getting darker. It rotates it around, so you're just getting reflection maps in different places. So you just rotate it around so it's bright where you want it to be bright and dark where you want it to be dark. And so, you know, literally I just rotate that around until it's kind of where I want it to be. I'm getting the reflections kind of how I want it. And then honestly, you just come up here to render. This is new. This GPU mode is GPU mode is new, but then you just click render. You choose what size you want it to be. You tell it how your JPEG, the quality of the JPEG, you pick the size, and then you just push render. And it will sit there and process and render it. I mean, just this being open is sucking enough of my GPU that we're having a problem. So you can see why we're not doing that, right? But hold on, let's just click on GPU mode and see. So that should take some of the lag off of the processor. I don't know if that'll make it less laggy. Nope, it will not make it less laggy for me. And so then you just hit render, and it'll render. And so in all reality, that is all I do. Do I have my downloads? No, I don't have, sorry, I didn't transfer my downloads, but I have a bunch of, like the jade and a bunch of stone and marble stuff. And like if I want that peg to be a different color, I need to disconnect these one sec. Somewhere I said, yes, please connect them, and that's not what we want. They changed their menus on me. This is the problem about upgrading the day you're doing it. Hold on. See that little link? Unlinked materials. There we go. Somehow all my materials were linked together. And so now, like, let's say you have a gemstone that you want to change. So now we just grab this, we bring it in, boom. And then you want the pen to be a different color, boom. Oh, you don't like that color? Okay, maybe we wanted it yellow. Hey, wait, let's turn this blue. And really, that's it. I mean, this is as much as I do. And then I push render. So, I mean, you can see that once you have your materials set up, and most of this is just purely downloaded stuff. I mean, there are there's entire libraries of materials. Hold on, let's go to Cloud Library. And seriously, this is, these are all materials. And you can search, you can type in and search for a material. These are just, you can search by like stone, marble. This library just keeps going and going and going. So there are thousands of materials that that are already made. You don't have to futz with them. And then I have the patinaed silver and gold that I'll give you. I need to figure out why they're not loading. There's a new kind of material that Keyshot is using, and like I said, I just upgraded yesterday, so I have no idea what some of that stuff is. But to be deadly honest, I very likely am not going to use most of it because, as you can see, there are tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of pre-made materials. And if you know how to just learn the little procedural of how to add an occlusion or something like that, like I said, there ain't there are a lot of videos talking about it, but I just set up those base materials and I don't touch them much. I just come in and I'm like, oh, I need a green, and I'll find a green I like, or here are spectral metallics, and you can, where's the search bar? So you just go gold, and then it will go through and it will find all the gold materials, right? So there are tons and tons of pre-made materials, and then all you have to do is futz with them a little. Yeah. You just grab the material and drag it. Drag the material and drag it. And drag it. Stone. Oh, I want purple marble, or whatever the hell that is. I mean, I can't tell you this is not rocket science, guys. I mean, especially using it at this level, it's just, I mean, all you're doing is you're dragging some materials on. Right. And you can come in to your materials, right, and select the material, whatever. No, it's this one, I think. No, this one. And you can change roughness, you can change the refractive index, you come into your material graph, and you can see that it's doing this, and then the color adjust. So if you want to see what each one of these things is actually doing, what is this texture map doing? You hit it, and then there's this little button right here with these two squares. You just tap it. No, that's not it. Sorry. Which one is it? Oh, did they change their icons on me? Maybe it's this one. Yeah. And so basically it's soloing. So now you can see that this is the pattern that that's doing. So now you can turn that off, come to color adjust, come to this, and you can see under here, right, these are all the little presettings. You can come here, you can change the size, the color, the bump. You can come in it. Why do I keep duplicating things? Right, and it just goes through and you can see what each one of these is doing, right? And hit that and it shows you what it's doing. And you just come in here and you can play with these sliders and numbers and change your materials. But I have a lot of the the sulfur metallics that I use already set up, so I can give you those. Right. There's tons of metal. So seriously, that is the extent. I mean, like, I'm going to do that, right? And now that's my base material. My base material. No. Right. Yeah, it's connected with Zbrush. You push go, it goes. It's super easy. And, these are good enough to give, some ideas of what's going on and the such. So I don't really go much more than this. This is the extent of it. And here, does anyone have any real questions here? The thing about faceted stones is that often you will need to do two passes, okay? So you do one for the metal, and then you do one so the stones reflect and refract right, okay? There's a pretty good, here, I'm gonna close this just because I'm sick of my entire machine just chugging. Let's come here, let's go here. If I'm not mistaken, it's this one right here, this webinar. It's an hour and 15 minutes, and it's about rendering jewelry. Now, it's in Keyshot 7, but this one goes into the multiple passes and stuff. So if you just do Keyshot rendering jewelry, and it shows you how to do the two passes and stuff. And then there are a couple, like could not find good diamond material, how to create your material standards in Keyshot. There are hand load of, you can see there, these, right, using no HDR, just lighting. So there's plenty of just quick, that's not where I want it. Come on. Right, but you can see that there's quite a bit of information of people using Keyshot and jewelry out there. And there's a way to do this in 2 passes where these, because really the lighting environment needed for the stones to really pop compared to the metal to really pop, you often need to do it in 2 passes. And when you're rendering, oh, I closed it, sorry. When you're rendering, it'll often say, what passes do you want to export? And then you just take it into Photoshop, use the base as a mask, cut it out, and just paste the gemstones in so they're more active. Because you can see these are there, but they're not super active. It's because this is all done in a 1-pass rendering. To get real, see how those stones are more dynamic here, but you know, you kind of have to light it where the light's going into the stone 90 degrees, and that way you get much more dynamic lighting with the stone. So to get good gemstone renderings, I mean, but see, like, it'll render this with no, and anyone's going to be able to understand what that is, right? So if you're trying to create renders that are going to win competitions and stuff, you're going to be doing multi-pass rendering no matter what. I do not do multi-pass rendering. I don't have the time, energy, or patience for it. So it's not something that I do. I mean, this will give anybody enough information to be able to make judgments off of, right? So I know that that's not the most complete and comprehensive can we try it? You want me to, well, I mean, do you really want me to turn it on, lag it out, and I'll try to muddle through it? I mean, they're really good. Those are very good step-by-step ways of going about it. And my machine won't, you know, if we were on my home machine, I'd feel much more comfortable, but I don't want to waste our last class just chugging on something that's a very easy lookup in Keyshot, if that makes any sense. Or is this something you all really, really want me to lag through? I mean, 1 second. The woman who runs the space is waving me out. She wants to ask a question. So I'll be right back. Sorry, guys. Hello, how are you doing? Boom. Okay. All right, so how many people do we have here? 26. Okay, so we have a good chunk of the class. All right, so seriously, and I mean, I'm not joking, that's all I do. I set up, it took a couple days to set up my materials, and then I just drag them, rotate them to where the light works best and push render. I mean, oh, I don't have it on this machine because, yeah, but so that's Keyshot. I mean, it's not hard. You push go. You just have to make sure the environment's bigger sometimes. And I think there's a way of setting your base environment so it comes in the same, roughly the same size every time. I don't bother. I just slide the thing and just go. All right. So here we are, the last meeting of this class. Are there any, so let's put it this way. Is there anything that someone feels that they're very much lacking, like that you just don't understand that we can go over today? Okay. So I really just want, and I know we've done this for 2 days, so that's okay, because once again, I really just want you guys to feel comfortable blocking up and being able to make a model. It's not hard. I can talk about sculpting technique. I can talk about whatever you want today. I just want you guys to feel fairly comfortable in your capacity to just make an object. It doesn't have to be a good object, because you're not going to get good objects until you put hours and 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 hours into this, right? That's the only way to get good at anything, is hours and weeks and days and years to get good. Nothing's easy. Well, I mean, to be fair, within Workspace, if people are having a lot of trouble, I'm more than willing to do another, like if everyone's like, hey, Tomas, can we have one more, can we have a YouTube or a Twitch thing? If we get a consensus, shit. Wow, today's a hard talking day. If we can get a consensus on what day it is, I'm more than willing to come in and just give you all an afternoon and answer questions on parts that you're working on. So don't feel like you're abandoned. Right now, you're at step 1. I want you guys to be able to go home. I want you guys to work on a few models, right? And then let's meet in a few weeks and we'll do a Twitch like this and we'll just look at what you have and we'll do kind of a little critique thing and, critique and QA where we're going through problems that we're having. I have no problems doing that for you guys. And we, as of now, still have Workspace or whatever, Artist Awake or whatever it's called. And then I guess that's fine. I'm going to try to figure out how to get Discord running because Shane's using Discord as his thing for class. So I'll try to get Discord set up. If it does anything better or worse, I guess I need to do it anyway. So whatever. Okay. All right. So we want to talk about sculpting. Is that what I'm seeing here? Is that a general consensus? We want sculpting. All right. Delete all. Okay. For everyone? Did I miss something? Yeah, I mean, end of the day, it's going to take, work for you all to process kind of some of the stuff that, this was like a real Zoomer sort of thing. So let's go over just some sculpting stuff. Okay. Where are you? It's real funny. I've been watching a bunch of the ZBrush Master series. I don't know if you all have seen these yet, but they're pretty good. They're a bunch of industry professionals, and I'm doing mine on the 30th, I guess. So I've been watching the ones in the past, and it turns into like an hour and a half, 2 hour, something like that conversation. And I'm going to go over Edward's line, the jewelry line, and just talk about line development and how much it takes to develop, a cohesive, well-designed, well-thought-out line. And it's been fascinating because I'm really blown away. I thought that more people kind of do what I do, but I'm wrong. All of these people, they all start with low res and, muddle around in low res for a long time. And I guess that we're just coming to our surface details differently. And, I guess when you're doing a person, in scale, right, the details are just, you don't need them necessarily. And so this is where and I will argue with anyone about this process, is that at the end of the day, we have, a 2 to 7 millimeter wide band. There's only so much you can do at a low res in a 2 millimeter band. If you have a 1.5 millimeter prong, you can sit there and futz with it half-assed and futz with it half-assed. And you just, as long as you have and I can't believe how many people just go into Dynamesh and don't have subdivision levels. And at least 4 of them said, well, you stay in low res because, if you get into your high reses, you can't control your surfaces. But that's because they're going to Dynamesh. It just blows me away. I'm just like, but the other thing that they do is, and I can understand why. If you're doing a figure and it has belts and it has all these things, they separate every single one of their elements, right? Some of these models that they're showing have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of elements. And for us, that's a nightmare. One, you just don't have enough room to put that much crap onto something, right? Because I know that it's all in scale in the computer, so it's all fake. But the fact is that, you can make a person, but if it's 10 millimeters when it's coming out of the machine, so, you can't get all that crap into it. So I really do, having watched these ZBrush Master courses or conversations, I am very much convinced that I am not insane, and this is by far the best way to go about doing this. Yeah, I'm not insane. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. There we go. Okay, so here we go. And I'm not going to blow any holes in this. I'm just going to talk about, getting to the repairing the wall. A car hit the wall. So is that really loud to you? It's really loud to me. How helpful. This is going to be great. So what I see is, right, I get a little bit more geometry on the outside because I'm going to be sculpting there. I'm not worrying about my interior surfaces. Once again, do not edge loop. If you want things to stay sharp, use creasing. Okay, so now we're just going to divide this up. Divide. Up into the 2 to 5 million poly range. So we're going to sculpt at low geometry at the moment, which is 2.3 million polys. All right, so yeah, no, I'm a special breed of batshit, I think. Okay, so here we go. We have a ring. And so you're like, oh, well, the edges are so round, you should have creased that. You guys, stop. So we're going to turn on our symmetry. I'm going to go Y. I think we're going to do Z symmetry 100. There we go. And now I'm just going to take SK trim. I am going to come in and flatten this edge just so we have a little bit of a facet there. Right? This is my life. So I have a flat facet. I know I have a half round facet over here. I'm going to Smart Resymmetry Z. Boom, and now I kind of have a half flush surface. Great. So now we're going to go to the top. I'm going to go X and Z symmetry. And so now we are at a high resolution. I have a bunch of subdivision levels. And now I'm going to come in and I'm going to start hunting for those moments. I'm going to use clay tubes. We all know why I use clay tubes, right? So clay tubes, that way we can come in and I can lay just one layer down. So at this point, that's too much. I want to be down here in this 3 to 5 range. All right, so top, I'm just going to define the top area. And see, this is just like sketching, right? And see, this is why I have it so low. I don't know how many of you are actually sketchers, but you know, you put down like 4 lines and then you find the one you want and you come in a little harder and you define that one, right? So as you can see, I have no idea what the center of this is going to be. You know, I was throwing things in this way, I'm doing things this way. All right, so let's just make it a combination of that. So this will come in, this will be a little hitch, come around. That, I want that to be proud. And, you know, at this point, I have no clue what we're doing, right? I feel, okay, well, we'll have a smaller center stone, so I'm going to spread these out a little more so I can use those as prongs. And I'm just kind of bringing lines in and seeing, do I want them there? Do I want them there? The other really important thing, use smooth stronger. Because that way when you smooth, see we're at a high resolution. In any smoothing I'm doing, I'm really just kind of erasing lines, right? I'm like, okay, well, what do I want? If it starts to get too bulky, I just come back over with negative and knock it down until I figure out what, where, and how I want to go about this, right? So I know that I want these spread a little, and now I'm just going to come in here and let's, okay, I decide I want these to actually come in a little closer, right? And now I'm knocking it back down because I don't want this to get too proud. We're still making decisions. And you can see, because I have a high res model, I have my clay tube set at a low setting. I can come in and I can really start to play with these, and I'm throwing a lot of lines in here, right? This is not one line. And by doing long, tight strokes, right? What I mean by long is long stroke pattern, right? Because like I said, what I see a lot of you doing, you're up here in the 20s, and then when you're stroking, you're kind of stroking big, and you see how you start to get lumps on stuff, and you're not being able to control that because you're getting lumpier and lumpier because you're doing this. One, you're using wide stroke patterns, so you're creating lumps. And two, you're using too much intensity at this point. So that's where a lot of you are having problems with your strokes, okay? So once again, I bring this down, 3 to 5. And as you'll notice, I'm doing very short stroke lengths, right? Or stroke steps, I guess you'd say, right? If you notice how little distance there is in each stroke, right? Now what that's doing is that since Clay Tools is actually a layer tool, or it works like a layer tool, right? It's only laying down that one layer. So in a lot of ways, as I stroke over this, it's actually making the surface smoother, which you're all not accomplishing, right? So a lot of it has to do with laying the stroke in and then stroking over it and just making sure these are tight strokes. Now, as you notice, as I'm going over this, right, this is getting pillowy. And that's just because as I stroke over it, I very rarely hit the same edge, right? So you tend to stroke off the edges, so the center gets more stroking than and so why it gets billowy is just our natural tendency is not to stroke over that edge. So we tend to stroke to the center more. And then anytime I start to get pillowy as I'm going on, I come back and just kind of knock it down. Right? And that just keeps everything low and flat. Because at the end of the day, remember, I'm trying to generate reflective surfaces. Flat surfaces reflect better than round ones. Well, for this, round surfaces have very distinct purposes, but for now, in this process, our flat surfaces are better. Okay, because it's giving us a reflection story, right? How are these going to reflect? How do I want them to present to the light? And you can see that I changed that dramatically, right? That now became an angle. So now we have this profile as opposed to this profile or this profile, right? So right now I'm just deciding on where I want my light to go, right? So we're like, okay, now, you know, how do we want to deal with this? Is this something that I want to continue just straight down the side? Right? Or is this something that's going to come straight down the side here? Is this something that's going to end here? And so, you know, once again, I'm just down here and kind of wrapping my head around what I want this stuff to do. And I'm just kind of fiddle-faddling around to figure out what my negative space is and all that's going to start to look like. So it's like, okay, if I do that, that leaves this as a big space to deal with. So if I come in and knock this down, I don't want that big a negative space, and now I'm going to come out here and figure out my negative space. Right, what this silhouette's going to look like. Okay, so that's giving me a little bit more direction on what that could be. Okay, so I think I want to transition here. That'll leave that. so you can see that I kind of was like, okay, well, we're going to make these longer. This is a elongated chevron that's taking place as we go round. All right, so, well, that's an interesting detail. And so that's why okay, we'll keep that. So that means this needs to be here. That needs to be there, and that can turn into that. All right. So you can see I'm throwing stuff around, I'm looking, I'm shuffling around. Okay, hold on. I guess it's been too long since I've looked at this. Okay, sculpting to deciding little moments. Working on everything. Yep. I'd love to see sculpting around the edge of something. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, we'll go to the bend arc thing. So sculpt flat and then bend it, okay? Yes, watching them now. What are you watching? Dental drill. Well, this is the antithesis, it seems, about how everyone works. Brian? I do use Dynamesh and that stuff, but I will, unless it's towards the end, like when I'm getting ready to print, then it doesn't matter. But if I am sculpting and I know that I'm going to continue to develop my sculpting surfaces, I will, like if I need to Dynamesh, there are all kinds of times when I'll work in Dynamesh for hours, you know. But that's usually because I'm doing stuff that's going to either be destructive to my mesh. So I'm going to, you know, stroke to Dynamesh, stroke to Dynamesh, stroke to Dynamesh. There are times when I will just Dynamesh, but at the end of it, I will always Z-remesh, divide, and project, because without subdivision levels, you guys are missing 90% of the cool crap that ZBrush can do. ZBrush is amazing in how it deals with its subdivisions, and you just can't get good subdivisions. I like my base model to be under 700 polygons, because that way I can divide it up to 9 subdivision levels and be in that 5 to 8 million range with 9 subdivision levels. So the subdivision levels and the more steps between your subdivision levels when you start to do smoothing and when you start to do reprojecting of your detail, or if you have something that's high detail and you want to move it, well, you can do it without trashing your model. So yes, I do use Dynamesh, but I will almost always Z-remesh, reproject, and have a model that has subdivision levels. That's very important to me. Sarah, how is so much ZBrush confusing? It's here, watch. Okay. You want to go over so much ZBrush. Here we go. We have a model. Hold on, let me find one that is not cut to parts. That just makes it easier. Have a model. So this is 500,000 polys. This does not have subdivision levels, right? So let's say I want to work on this model. Okay. So much ZBrush. I'm going to go to Remesh Plus. I want 7 subdivision levels. I want my lowest resolution to be, let's say, around 1,000. Right? Recreate subdivisions. This doesn't need to be dynameshed first. And you hit Z Remesh. And now it's going to create a shell. The key to having successful Z remeshes with this is to not have that first subdivision level be too low. If you know that you're not really going to sculpt too much on it, 5 subdivision levels is fine. You have to push OK. Right, so it's going to go through its process. Why the last one was confusing was because for some reason the projections wasn't working right. Okay. Oh, it's just the count right here. Is that what you're? Well, you just that visible count button. You slide it, and it opens that up. For Ringmaster and shells. So we'll go over that in a second. Once again, if we lag, it's my machine thinking. So are there questions that we can ask verbally or that I can show you by sketching and not using ZBrush while this is thinking? So actually I can kind of do it this way. When I'm scooping a curve in, like trying to get this shape, right? And so we have a plane that's like this. Does that make sense? So what I tend to do is stroke at low angles. So you start up here, you start soft, stroke heavy, soft, soft, heavy, soft, soft, heavy, soft. And so what that's doing, soft, heavy, soft, right? So when you're stroking at a steep angle across a surface, if you're stroking at steep angles this way and then steep angles this way, you can see that just intrinsically you're going to be removing more surface here in the middle as you go along. And I'll physically show you in a second. But a lot of it has to do with stroking at long diagonal angles. And then that way you're removing more from the middle as you go along, as long as you're using pressure, right? Start soft, soft, heavy, soft, soft, heavy, soft, soft, heavy, soft, and you can see that now you will have removed less from the 2 points and much more from the center. And instead of doing it just scoops, which I do sometimes as well, you're just kind of using this stroke at a deep angle, right? It's just Hey, Sid, how's it going? If I started at 1,000 and I pitched 7, this might, why this is taking so long is this might be projecting like a 12, 14, 15,000 or 15 million poly. If it's projecting a 15 million poly mesh, that's why it's taking so long. Oh my God, guys. Okay, I'm not going to wait for this. Oops. I just wiped everyone's questions, but that's okay. Mikey, will you just post that again? Sorry, guys. I just wasn't going to wait for that. Wow, look, 52% of our frames over the last 2 minutes were skipped. Thank you. My little CPU has a hard time with it. Just refresh. Guys, Sarah, seriously, if the screen lags when I'm doing a process, it's because the process is taking over the CPU. It does it every week. I love it. Every week you'll act surprised. Oh my God, what happened? It's like, okay. Hit that one too many times. 79 million polys. We don't need 79 million polys for this ring. 5 million will do. Delete higher. Actually, we're rolling over curve, so lower res. Let's come back here. Delete higher. Let me crease these edges because if we're talking about rolling over an edge, crease, edge loop complete. All right, so we have a sharp edge, right? Uncrease all, boop. All right. So we're here. If you're saying that you're having a hard time sculpting over an edge, right? Right, we're like, well, shit. Can't sculpt over that edge. Well, this is where I use Trim Dynamic. Trim Dynamic is just the best tool for knocking edges off. Come Trim Dynamic, come back here, and just decide what you, and you just boom, knock that little lip off. Clay tubes. And there you go. Does that answer your question about rolling over the edge? I'm not mad at you. Trust me, if I'm mad at you, you're going to know it. No, I'm not mad at you. Don't be silly. I just find it really entertaining that it doesn't matter how many times I tell you guys that. You're always like, well, wait a minute, it's freezing. It's like, well, I just started the So Much Monsters process. You know that it's going to freeze, but everyone acts surprised every time it happens. It's like, what is it? Object permanence. And so literally like babies, you know, nine ba, or what is it in English? Peekaboo, right? Like you go like this and a baby doesn't understand object permanence. So you really do disappear, right? You're gone. It really, they don't understand object permanence. So, you know, nine ba. And so I kind of feel that way with every time my stream stalls with you guys. I swear to God, every time. I don't know what to say. Nine ba. Okay, please show how to create a scoop. Did I get a response of, is that? Oh my God. Okay, so I don't see a response. Did that show you, do you understand that about sculpting over sharp edges? Trim Dynamic is the best tool to do it. Come in, just knock the edge off in Trim Dynamic, and then just sculpt away. Right? Everybody got that? I'm going to wait here until I hear yes, which is probably going to be 30 seconds. So as soon as you hear that, tell me if this answered your question. Okay, great. So now we will move to the next question. Next question is, how do we create a scoop? Okay, so let's create a scoop right here, right? So I'm going to decide I want a scoop right here. I'm going to knock it back. Right? And really it just comes down to pressing harder when we get to the center. And I find that longer strokes work better because I can see soft, hard, soft, soft, hard, soft, soft, hard, soft. So you can see that you start creating a scoop just because I'm pressing harder here in the center, right? So now look, we have kind of a scoop already, right? So now I just come back in and kind of knock down that edge, knock down that edge, kind of come in here and scoop out the center a little, right? And as we get there, for all those people who say, oh look, but see, you've just run into the ultimate problem, Tomas. You have all these lumps and you can't solve them because you have so much for geometry. You're wrong. Right, and so there you have your scoop. You can either pinch the edge a little, use SK trim. Where'd my scoop go? There it is. And then just come back in once again, clay tubes, turn it down. And then you can really just kind of tune where you want your scoop. And a lot of that really is just pressure, right? I'm just pressing harder and letting my stroke fade. Or pressing softer and letting my stroke fade to heavy, right? And then if you're doing it with a very low, you know, I'm only at, what am I at? 3. There you go. Then you can come back in and you can just touch up the little areas of each, you know, if you wanted to scoop more here, just come back in and, you know, do it. But the key to all of this and how I have, why I can do this and these surfaces stay fairly smooth, and then we just lower, get a bigger brush, smooth. So I can do anything anyone can do using low polys, except I can choose when to do it, right? I don't have to be stuck in that I have no mesh, I can't do crap, I can't make any decisions because I don't know what's there, by hopping back up. So does that make sense? I don't have, my restream is screwing up. I don't know why my restream isn't working, so I'm not getting the Twitch from YouTube. Is that what you're saying? Sorry, I don't know why restream isn't working. Restream's giving me a little drama. I apologize. I will try to solve that problem at some point, but this isn't the point. I apologize. So there we go, right? So scooping. Why do you keep putting the sharp edge question back in? Did I answer the sharp edge question or not? Mike, are you just insisting on putting that back in after I said it or not? Okay, well, you guys are confusing the living shit-jeebus out of me. I did sculpt grills. I don't have them here. We can go over that with it. All you do is you take the scan of the teeth and use them as a cutter, right? So take the scan of the teeth and extract it, right? Mask it and extract it so you know the hole is roughly the size of the tooth, right? And then sculpt away, and then just go back and use the scan as a cutter to make sure everything's clean and settled on the part. We can go over that. I think actually if you go to my ZBrush live streams, if you go through the pictures, you'll see teeth. That's usually, go to the week before that, right? Because they usually use the last week's sculpt as this week's image, like on the little preview pictures, you know? So, yeah, and that would be probably maybe a year ago. Look about this time last year in the streams, and you'll see that. If you just go through my things, just look for the preview picture, you'll see like some little sharp mechanical teeth, and that's them. Cool. So it's really just stroking over it. It's really not. You just have to remember to press heavier towards the center, and that's easier because if you're doing long strokes this way, right? If you think about it, you're actually spending more time in the channel, right? Right? So you're actually spending more time in the channel if you're stroking lengthwise, and that gives you, right? And it's just kind of constant back and forth to figure out what you want that scoop to look like. If you want it to be a deep scoop, use a smaller brush because that allows you to come in and stroke more in the scoop. Does that make sense? And you can see it's just kind of working it back and forth until you're kind of at the depth you want. Of course. No, you don't have to apologize. I just have to make sure that I thought I covered it. If I didn't, then, or if you didn't understand. Okay. So now, filigree, sculpt over sharp edge. Okay, so we have filigree. Now, when you say filigree, are you talking about like my filigree skull and things like that? Or are you talking about, so let's say you wanted this ring to be filigree. I find that it's usually easier. Let's change this dramatically. Okay. So filigree. Oops. Let's just go there. So I know that we all of a sudden want this to become a little filigree ring, right? So I'm just going to move this kind of out. I'm going to find the shape, right? And obviously I'm just making this up. So, and at this point, this is where Dynamesh can be useful. Okay, so I've just stretched this out. I'm just going to Dynamesh it. And so now I'm going to just kind of come in. Whoops, that's not clay tubes. I'm going to come in here and sort of decide how I want my filigree to be. So this will be, because it's Dynamesh, you need a little bit more mesh intensity there. Okay, so I want it to start being filigree here, so we're going to kind of do this. We know that we need sort of an outside edge. I need this to be solid. At this point, I'm just kind of coming in and trying to figure out where I want my edges to be. And so what I'm doing is I am sculpting up my filigree, right? So and I'm just making, little decisions. What do I want this to look like? Okay. And all right, so now let's pull some of this down just so everything's not at the edge. Okay, so let's do this because I don't want an anemic profile there. I'm going to right. So now I'm just going to take Cascade Trim and kind of smooth this out just a touch. Okay. Get my mask sharp, it's sharp, and now we just come back in and mask this. And obviously you're going to be a wee bit more careful than I am being. Come back in, tune up your shapes. We're not super concerned with this yet. Let's just look at this edge real quick. Now, if I have a concrete pattern that I know I'm doing first, like, if it's from an illustration or something, I would probably just block it up. And allergies, hell. Probably just block it up in Zmodeler. Having talking issues. Go to extract. I want it to be double. Boom. And now accept. Hide that. And now I'm going to, I think this should be polygroups if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So we are going to go detect edges, keep groups. We're going to take this down to 1, let's say 1, enter. Z remesh. And I didn't duplicate this because I'm not super interested in this base shape, keeping its base shape. I don't mind if this gets softer, right? So now you can see that we have a quad model, right, that has different polygroups. Now we're just going to divide, 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 divide. And now you can come in and sculpt this to your heart's desire, right? So that is the easiest way to generate filigree. Now, if you notice this is fat, I tend to try to make my filigree anemic, so thinner than normal, because that way when I sculpt on it, it starts to get fatter and then it doesn't get super fat. If we look at... Aren't they here? Yeah, here. See all this stuff here? This? I decided the sort of the shape that I wanted, the form, and then I just went over and I masked out the base shape. And obviously I did this in eighths, right? So there's 16 panels. But I did the one panel. I masked it, and that's how I did this filigree, like this. This filigree was actually, this is more like blocked up, right? That was done as independent shape. So this would be like a Z model block up, and that is more the mask and extrude or extract, right? So they have slightly different feels to them. I mean, I could get them to feel the same if I put that much energy into it. But here again, we had the skull, right? And then I just I sculpted it out, and then I extracted and reprojected. So this was sculpted on something that was solid. I masked, Z-remeshed, reprojected, and then that way I got my reprojection, but I just sat there and sculpted it, and then just sculpted the airspace back and masked to the edge that I wanted to mask to. Does that make sense? Oops. So Mike, does that answer the question about filigree? You can see if we come here and you know, I can sit here and sculpt it here. You know, just start cutting this stuff back to where there's a lip, because I know that's where I want my filigree's edge to be. So I'm just using additive and subtractive to get my edge, my details. So I can do it on a solid piece. And I'm deciding where my edges are here by cutting it back. Right. whatever these details turn out to be. Right, you can just see I'm cutting back away from my detail. And so you can do a lot of the work just flat and then come back. And on a case like this, where we've already worked out some of our issues, where we started to sculpt and kind of get our surfaces into place. At this point, I would make sure, come here, turn double off, and that way it's only extracting behind. Extract. Oh no, sorry. You have to come here and make this negative, my bad, sorry guys, negative 0.03, enter, extract. And see, now it's only going in. We'll accept that. And now you can see that we have the extracted surface with most of the detail there. I would tend to come back here and just flatten this off some. Detect edges, keep groups, Z remesh. No, I didn't lower my count, but you'll get the idea. Boom, so now we have our remesh, right? Then you divide it up to where you had, you know, a good projection distance. Then bring this, ooh, that's not the right one, bring this one in. Here's where keeping the polygroups is important, because we can just go like this. Hold on, let's hide this real quick. And I'm just going to tap that, and you notice that it's only that front surface, right? So now, when I come in, I turn this on, I project all, and we're not getting so much spread because all we're doing is projecting that purple surface, right? Turn this off, turn this back on, you know, get our polygroups, and then that way it's just a smooth, either using history, where you just go back to before it gets that spread or whatever. And so now you have, you know, a solid form with the base sculpture on. Come back in, sculpt it. You can come back and even this crap out and get it sort of into place. Well, if I know exactly what it's going to be, yeah, often I'll block it up. I mean, you know, it's... right? And so now, modeler. You know, if you know what it's supposed to be, then turn Z off. too far ahead of myself. Increase all. You know, if you're going off a drawing, it's super simple just to follow your image. You know, whatever this is turning out to be. Right? And then divide it 1, so you get that. Now you can take move topological, and this is where move topological becomes a big bonus. We come in here, let's actually increase the size of this to 0.6, because I want this to be a big move, big smooth move, right? So we're going to bring this down. Just get it big, make sure you're touching that. And now you can bring this up, you can bring this down. You can bring that up, you can bring that down. Up. Right, so you can get this to be all filigree-y. Divide, and then, you know, obviously you can leave lower. Right? And so, you know, you can get the filigree pretty quickly that way as well. It just depends. Like if you have it like the skull, it was much easier just for me to sculpt it onto the skull and extract it. Right? It just depends on the situation. Hey, Robodoll. Well, I have a Formlabs printer. It does the supporting. I mean, I can show you in Formlabs how I support, because right now that's the only printer I use that requires supports. The other ones I use don't use supports. So, I mean, the way that you are going to, like, if you're actually building your own supports, I'm sorry, buy better or get software, because you're going to have a lot of failures. But the easiest way to deal with supporting is I tend to use a Boolean square, right? So append square. And now we take this, we turn this into negative. We'll grab this down here. Turn Boolean on. Turn that off. Okay, and now, hold on, let's turn that back on real quick. Make it bigger. Bring it down. Turn that off. And so now all you do is you pull this away. And so, okay, so just as far as supporting goes, you're going to need a support there and a support there. And as we keep coming up, right there, you're going to need a support there, and a support there. And we just keep coming up, right? And so you're going to need a support right here. Right? Does that make sense? So you're just looking for your islands. And so as you're passing through, boom, support. Support, support, support. Support, right? So that's how the easiest way to determine where you have to have supports, right? They have to touch those places. And then as you come in, it depends on how big the supports are you're using and a lot of that. And so now you come in and go, okay, well, let's just even it up and we'll put 2 in here, one in there, one in the, and you go through and just add it. But anywhere there's an island, you have to have a support there. Does that make sense? I almost never use curves to create filigree. Like I said, either I'm going to block them up or I'm just going to sculpt them in and then extract them out, remesh and project. I haven't had much luck with curves as far as, and then I have just tubes. So I have to go back and now I have to sculpt sort of those facets and faces on something that's a tube, where it's so much easier to get to this point. Right? And here, like I said, I can make facet decisions. I can take it all the way to finish here if I want to, right? So I just find taking curves, well, now I have tubes or flat ribbons. And I have to go back and redo it again anyway. So I think either doing it this way or doing it in block up, I have much more control over my surfaces before in that block up phase. Okay. So yeah, I wouldn't approach it with the curves. If you're just looking for a cheesy, quick way of doing something, sure, that works. Another way, let's actually get back. And so let's say no, I'm not going to show you that because that's just going to confuse you. And it's kind of I wouldn't do it that way no matter what. So yeah, I think that those are the two ways I'd approach filigree. Okay. So let's do the, because I have these two models right here, let's go ahead and do the two surfaces thing. So let's say we have this ring and we have this filigree, right? And we want this filigree to be on that ring. Is that what you're kind of talking about as far as like two surfaces go? Mm-hmm. Mirror and weld. Boop. Oops. So we have this lovely little shape and we want it to attach to this model, right? Okay, give me a feedback. Is that what we're talking about when you say you want to learn about getting these things together and then Z remeshing? Well, until I hear no, I'm going to just assume this is what we're talking about. I'm just going to beef these up. I'm going to come under here and beef these connections up. Okay, it's still not. Brian, is this what we're talking about? Is this what you want to know about? Is this example kind of what we're heading for? Oh, the lag really is just really annoying. So as you can see on this one, I'm just, because these are in separate subtools, I'm just going to bend them in. I'm going to kind of get them in line to where I want them.
I just wanted you to know I'm not leaving. I'm just grabbing something next door to eat.
Right on. No, I'm here. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Okay, it's been long enough. Seriously, guys. Answer, is this it? Right. Is it really this long a lag? Jesus Christ. Well, until one of you tell me that this isn't what we're talking about, then I will keep doing this. Sorry, I'm not getting pissed with you. The lag sucks, and I'm not a patient person, honestly. Yeah, of course you can kit bash jewelry. I don't much do it because, honestly, I kind of, part of my whole process is exploring it in the sculpting, not, but of course you can kit bash jewelry. All right. I'm going to turn on Sculptress Pro, and I am just going to start to do a little. trying to get the, ooh, too big. Just getting some filigree stuff in there. Brian, you're the one who asked me about attaching two different surfaces. I'm asking, is this what you're talking about when you're saying two different surfaces? So yes, I'm asking you, since you had the question about it. But what I need to know is this what you're talking about, or do you have a different question? Because there's no point in me going into this if this isn't the question. Okay. Right, so I'm just kind of getting this where I want it. I've kind of pulled these things in. I can kind of, you know, draw these down and in to my surfaces, right? So I'm now deciding where these two surfaces are crossing. Right. And you just kind of work them into where you want them to be, right? So obviously these might be getting thin at the ends here. And because we have Sculptress Pro, I'm just kind of, I just inflate them so I have more than enough room, because if you get them too small, they kind of break apart, right? So just trying to get wherever those intersections are, going to inflate it just a touch and kind of get it to where we want it, right? We've decided this is where everybody is, right? We're happy, we're great. This is a point when I tend to merge visible, because now I have this on its own subtool in its own world, right? So I've removed all the other stuff from it. Come here. It's now on one subtool. If you want to stay here, because let's say you're going to reproject back to something, all you do is you just grab this, come down here. Well, I would duplicate these and then just merge down, right? So now we have that. W. Remesh by, well, we're going to Z remesh this, right? You said how to get back to a quad, so I'm just going to remesh by Dynamesh. Let's just come here and go, it doesn't matter there, that's fine. Okay, so now we have a shell, accept, and now we go to Z remesh. I'm going to take this down. 1,000 should be fine. Let's go ahead and give it 2,000. We're not going to have as many subdivision levels just yet, but I want to make sure that we have enough geometry to do it. So Z remesh. Jesus fucking Christ. That's absurd. It's actually that's quite infuriating. So it's already enabled. I don't know. Twitch is screwing us. It's so funny, I'm still minutes away from that. That's just horrifyingly annoying. Okay, so do you see what happened? This is very important to notice. As we look at this, this is all twisted right here, but it's not twisted right there. This is where, but it looks like we have plenty of geometry to deal with, okay? So the setting of the geometry is fine, but because this is complicated and we want center lines, we're going to turn on symmetry. And we're not going to undo this. This is fine. Well, maybe not. We will undo this because that was sloppy right here. So what we're going to do is turn symmetry on. And we're going to do X and Z symmetry. And now we are going to 2000's fine. We're going to lose a lot of layers, but we may Z remesh it to a lower mesh yet again. We just need to make sure that it works the first time. So we're going to do XZ 2000. We don't have to detect edges or keep polygons or any of that crap, or keep polygroups or any of that crap. So we're just going to Z remesh. I would restart the stream if I thought it would help, but I don't think it's helping. I think that there's something that Twitch is doing right now that is a pain in the butt. So you can see that we have 20,000 active points and we have enough for everybody. Now you can see that we got a little thin right here if I'm going to try to lower this. So I'm going to take inflate, and I'm just going to inflate these a little. Turn Sculptress Pro off. I'm just going to inflate these a little bit just so they have a wee bit more mass there. I think we could use a wee bit more mass here. Don't get super excited. We're just giving it a little bit more because I want to take this down. The meeting app is theirs and they have classes scheduled. That's why we can't go to the meeting app. And I don't have enough money to afford GoToMeeting, so nope, you're stuck with this. Sorry. All right, so we're here. Now I'm going to try this, and I'm going to go down to, let's go to 800. So that's 0.8, right? And now we're going to Z remesh this. And you can see we're down to 12,000. So I would argue that we could actually even go lower. Once it's Z remeshed, you can see we can now get down here. And that still retains most of our curve detail. We're not flattening anything out. Let's just go all the way down and see what it gives us. Nope. As I thought. I think that that's probably as close as we're going to be able to get without removing these where we start changing the shapes, right? And so now divide, 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 divide. And now you're back up to sculpting. Right, you have clean quad mesh. You basically have your geometry where you needed it, right? Or where you wanted it. And now we'll just come back in and start sculpting this stuff. Post. Right? And now you just come in, sculpt away, and I just honestly believe that there are so many people on Twitch now because of Corona that their servers can't keep up. That's the only thing I can honestly think it can be. It's ridiculous. Right, and so now you have plenty of geometry to come back in and sculpt as you want. Well, we have gone over some of those in class. We've gone over Kitco, right? We've gone over Imm scale, right? Imm Extractor, I don't actually have installed on this. But remember, what Imm Extractor does is, so if I have multiple things here, you use the Imm Extractor and then it creates a insert multi-mesh tool. So it takes all of your subtools and turns them into, so basically where we would have to come over here and create from mesh, create insert mesh, right? It's just a one button click and you can assign what it does. Well, of course we went over Ringmaster. Remember, all Ringmaster is you come here and you choose a size and then you go create ring base mesh. But remember I said that if you use it, you have to use it from the start, because if you append it into the thing, it creates a new ZPR, right? So just make sure if you're using this. But I tend to like using, right, you can do this, you can set the thicknesses, you can even place a gemstone on it. But what I was saying is that I made all these ring meshes and I put them here in tools. So instead of creating a new base mesh, you just come here and you just select the ring size and you can bring it in as a Z tool, as opposed to changing everything you've worked on, or, you know, closing all that out and bringing it in. So we did go over Ringmaster. I'm just saying that for the most part, I use my tools more than Ringmaster now, because Ringmaster screws with the scale if it's not the first thing you do. If you know you're working on a ring and you want to start a ZPR, use Ringmaster. Okay? So we did go over Ringmaster. Kitco is literally, I mean, I use Kitco every time we go in here. You hit Kitco. I have it right here, right? Get metal prices for a subtool. I don't know how big this is. So this is a tiny part, but you can see this shows you the volume. It gives you a dimension bounding box. Gold today is $1,716.60 an ounce. And then this is what it is, because that is for 24 karat gold, right? So each of these alloys has a different percentage of the 24 karat gold. So it's processed out by price. Here, let's make this bigger. That's not going to work. Yeah, it's roughly ring size. Get metal prices. So here you can see that, you know, 14 karat white gold, it's $258 worth of gold, right? 9 karat palladium white gold, it's only $166 a carat, you know. And palladium, it's $451, and platinum, it's $306. In 22 karat it is 575. Do we not have a 24 karat on here? Interesting. In one of the updates, 24 got knocked out. Fascinating. It should have a 24 karat yellow gold as well. But, so really that's all you do, right? And you can save it. But this gives you, that's how Kitco works. Quick scaler. Oh, once again, I don't have that. Some of these I don't have installed on this machine. I was just saying that a lot of these are ones that, because some of those are new, quick scaler's new, and so is quick scaler, layer brush, Imm Extractor. So those are new, and I was saying that those are probably useful tools. I just haven't used some of them. That's why they're not installed here, but I would say those are ones you should download and play with, right? So Imm draw size was, what are we doing? Well, Lloyd, we did a whole bunch of, I think, didn't Monday we go over how to prepare models for printing? I know we went over it at one point. Mike might remember, because my poor brain. But as we get on, I can go over it again. But it was pretty well covered in Monday's class, I think. Yeah, that's the layer tool. I don't even know what the hell it's doing, but it's taking too long. I'm just getting pissed off now. This is becoming very frustrating, I must admit. You know what, guys, let's do this. I'm going to run to the restroom, and then I'm going to restart the stream and see if that helps with the lag, because a 2-minute lag is going to make me want to murder things. So I'll be right back. Gotta pee, and then I'm filling my water bottle up. I'll come back. I'll reboot the stream, and we'll see if that helps. I'm starting to get frustrated, and that's not good. Be right back.